Scott Moe is the Premier of Saskatchewan, and he joins me right now because I want to put the question to you about Canada as a nation. There used to be something called cooperative federalism. It seems that not only with the carbon tax, but other matters, you may be the last person to know what the federal government is doing or trying to do in Saskatchewan.
Yeah,
what's going on with our federalism?
Yeah, it's entirely problematic because there's industries that are being impacted and jobs that are being impacted in those industries and families that are being impacted. This, in many cases, is how they create wealth. In Saskatchewan, we produce fuel, we farm, we produce food,
you can't,
and we
can't
produce
plow
fertilizer.
a field without gas or diesel.
Absolutely, and so when these policies come in, they say they're unconsulted, unrealistic. It is really in contravention to what traditionally has worked in this nation, which is cooperative federalism, and they're bordering on another term that has been thrown around, and that's coercive federalism.
Do you feel, as a premier, as a Western premier, I know that recently other Western premiers you met together, do you feel that you have been coerced into many things?
Yeah, and it really is rooted in a federal government that seems adamant in many cases of finding its way into areas of provincial jurisdiction, whatever that might be. Natural resource production, for one, is by the Constitution very much in the realm of and the jurisdiction of provinces. And we see the federal government using environmental policy to find their way into that. Healthcare, we're seeing it in, whether it be some of the addictions policy, decriminalization of drugs that's happening. They're bullying or pushing their way into that space as well. And so, that's where the problem lies. And I think if we got back to cooperative federalism and got away from these unconsulted policies that are not consulted with provincial jurisdictions, not consulted with industries that are being impacted, families, I think we'd get to a much better place. And you'd find policies that would work and be workable and realistic versus unrealistic.
Recently, and it's with this last Justin Trudeau government, they have been picking winners in industry. And one of the ones they picked were electric cars, huge subsidies. And now we're hearing industries, Ford and now Volkswagen, saying, we aren't going into electric cars because people don't want them. It's hard to plow a field with an electric tractor. Do you think that governments should pull back and let industry flourish, help it, but not sit there and pick winners and losers?
You're seeing very different approaches between the government south of the 49th parallel and the government north of the 49th parallel. The Investment Reduction Act, for example, is there to incentivize investment into the U.S. areas. It's an expensive act, very much a large investment coming from the federal government, but less about picking winners and losers and more about really incentivizing those that want to invest in the U.S. What we're seeing here is the government being the gatekeeper on who's going to invest and will co-invest with you, picking winners and losers. And as my predecessor always said, when governments get into that position, they all too often, they'll pick the loser every time.
Mr. Premier, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you run federally. We could use some of you in Ottawa.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
3 minutes. This show provides independent analysis of the issues. We are not paid by the government. And as I am finding, so much business in Canada relies upon various governments that they don't want to sponsor or advertise on a show which may become controversial, which talks about liberty, freedoms, sometimes criticizes government. I've had guests on that support the government. But people are saying, you know what? We don't want to bite the hand that feeds us, i.e. government, which is why I hope you'll subscribe and contribute to keep this show on the air.